G'day and welcome back for more Survival Impossible. I'm staring at the Fort Capac printer because that's what I want to start working on today. And it is going to be an enormous project, which is why I am so very glad I have the cheese ball to help me with it. Because I'm going to need it. This thing is huge. Like, thinking about it, I am building a large grid within another large grid, so this is going to be, like, stupidly large. This thing effectively has to have a space in it big enough for me to have the Fort Capac in it, then drop down inside and grab the Fort Capac with the panini. And then I need a shell around that that makes it look a bit sensible. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Your health is low. Health critical.
That was so close. Oh man, that was so close. Okay. So that's a start to an episode. Sure. We'll let's grab some fresh bottles, shall we? Ooh, 8 health. 8. Man. Oh. I'll go back outside in a second. Maybe I can't see it from here. But basically, the Fort Capac printer is a perfect example of an issue I've always run into, and I'm sure I'm not alone with this, with anything where you build a hangar. Because you've got this enormous empty space that is effectively just a giant box. How do you make that giant box look interesting? Typically what I've tried to do is add extra bits to that box so that it's got functions besides just that giant box, and potentially something that's big enough to allow you to do something interesting with it. And my thought for the Fort Capac printer is make it the home for a lot of my vehicles that currently don't have homes. We've got my crane, we've got the rock lobster, they've got those parking spots. They're reasonable vehicles to have in those parking spots because they're the vehicles that are going to get used the most. What I'm thinking is having a bit of a parking garage for the Splitsie, for the Absconder, for the Remora's launch vehicle, which it's weirdly only got used once, but, you know, whatever. Having a parking spot for the Searchy, maybe even having a few parking spots for more Canaries as well, because I would like to be able to fit a few of them around here at this end of the base to help me protect myself. The other thing of note is that my batteries on my base are almost completely out of power. So, actually I think they might be completely out of power. So I'm in a bit of a bind there. I will also need to make sure that this new facility has enough power generation capacity that's useful to me. So I'm going to be putting solar panels on the roof. I'm going to be putting wind turbines on the roof. Still not doing anything massive in this save like the solar axe from Survival maybe, because I've intentionally avoided it. Now I'm tempted to turn this hydrogen engine on, but I have an idea around that before I do it, because I don't want it to run forever. Let's just do this before I begin time block. Let me go downstairs here, because I know I've got room underneath the base. And I'm going to stick a timer block down in here. Oh, I didn't actually end up welding this stuff. Also, that feels lower than I remember it. I'm only putting this down here because I can't think of where else to put it. There's no story reason I want to put the server stuff down here. It's like, yeah, this will be a good enough point for a timer block. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this timer block to be the way I turn that hydrogen engine on that's going to power stuff. Because I want it to turn them back off again. Timer block, setup actions, engine. We've only got one large grid engine attached, and so that's the one I'm going to run. I'm going to set it to be toggle block off And I'm going to set my timer delay to... Let's leave it running for like 3 minutes, just so that we've at least got the engine running for a while. So I'll hit start on that, and then I'll just turn the engine on. I probably could... If I build 2 timers, I could set this up to be automated, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah. Okay, it's putting out 5 megawatts. My batteries on my base are... Right. Are still depleted. That's probably because of things like the cheese ball taking all the power. Because I've got the rock lobster and the cheese balls both set to recharge. This makes me wonder if I could get back to the other base and fill up with another load of hydrogen without activating all those bases around and getting a drone after me. I don't feel super confident about that. Right. So step 1 is move the Goofy and the other vehicles around here, which is going to require me building new batteries on them so I can get them out of the way to build this building. Because what I'm going to do is make this big enough that we'll have proper storage for them. Proper parking spots, at least. One of them will be like an outdoor, just undercover bit, but for the Liftsy, I'm going to give it an interior spot because I'm pretty sure it'll fit through a large grid gate. So I wouldn't mind using one of them to put a little parking spot for it somewhere around right here. Give it a real home, because it's never had one. And I can also then set up a proper charging mechanism for it so it can be hooked up to the base. One vehicle in particular that I want to make sure has a proper home is this one. This Canary has not had a proper home for a very, very, very long time, and I would like to get this off the side of this building. I like the way that the vehicle construction area finished, and I hate that I've had this connector or rotor or whatever I've had connected off the side here the whole time. So I want to fix that, and I'm going to do that with the Fort Capac printer building. One thing it's not going to be a home for the little red battery, because the little red battery, it's going to stay there for the time being. I don't have an idea in mind for it yet. Maybe it'll stay there till the very, very end. Who knows? I certainly don't. Oh, right. That's something I need to remember. I can't use the camera because I quickly overload the power of the one battery. Can I push myself backwards so I can keep it in view? There we go. This works, sort of. It's janky, but it is working. Alright, that'll do. Turn off that antenna. Hopefully it'll keep that charge in that battery so I can use that battery to just get it up on whatever structure I build for it. Now, to build the Fort Capac, I think I need to first off get rid of these temporary structures around here because they're going to be quite distracting. Also, they'll be really difficult to get rid of or to build around when I'm building with the cheese ball, because if I build from a cockpit, I can't grind stuff away. Basically, I want to make it so that I've got a blank slate to start with. Okay, that should be pretty much everything I can safely remove from this. And what do I want the floor to look like? Yeah, let's go with that one for the bulk of it. So the majority of the floor is going to look like that with just the boxes. What I'll likely do is grind up some of these and make patterns in it, but it's hard to come up with the patterns for the floor until I've got kind of the whole thing in. I find it very difficult to do that from the outset, so I tend to just accept that loss. And when the launch air base hasn't sent anything down in a while and I still haven't run out, I think we're good, because I could always just send down some more or finish cleaning up all of the drop pods that I've got around here anyway. So I've still got heaps of ore drop pods around. The printer area of this build is not going to be airtight. I had thought about doing a very large airtight door using merge blocks and things like that. But having spent a bit more time thinking it through, I just don't think it's worth it. So for the floor bit, the other thing I want to do is have a little kind of gully thing that goes down the middle here where the piston runs. Not because you need to, just because I want to. With the way the block collisions work now, you're perfectly fine having this at the height immediately under the piston, but I thought it'd look nice having a little bit of a divot there and kind of feed into the industrial feeling of this room. And I may well do some of this, or even all of this, in Hazard. At least try it in Hazard at one point. Another thing I want to do when this is close to finished is make a bunch of timer blocks and make this whole sequence single push button. But what I want to do is make it sort of look a bit different to how it's currently running, or how it was running when I first set it up. When I first set it up, I just made the pistons move really, 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 really slowly. What I want to do instead is have them move in stepwise chunks, or move stepwise. So they'll move 2.5 meters, stop, move 2.5 meters, stop, move 2.5 meters, stop. And when they reach a particular phase, then a sensor will trigger and trigger the timers to move on to the next phase of the construction. And I want to do it all with just timer blocks and sensors, no scripts. No scripts at all, just timer blocks and sensors, and see if we can get something that looks cool with that limitation in mind. And I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. And why do I want to do it with just timers? Because I think you can. But also I think it's kind of nice to do things that way from time to time, especially given that Xbox players can't easily use scripts for stuff like this. So being able to think through how we could do it without invoking the use of scripts is a useful as well as fun challenge. Oh, this is going to take a lot of stuff to build. This is big. Just thinking about this floor and how little power I have in the base, and whether that should impact how I approach welding this up. Obviously, there's an argument for just getting it done quickly. And obviously there is an argument for just doing it with my hand welder, because then I don't have to fly to weld this floor. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of leaning towards welding as much of this building as possible by hand, just because I am running out of power on the base, and I know there are going to be some bits that I'm going to need the cheese ball for. So I think I'm going to do some hand welding. Get this floor at least mostly done. But I kind of just want to, before I hand weld a huge floor, decide whether I want some different patterns in it and where I might want them. Actually, before I go and do a ton of hand welding, let's have a look at something. I was reminded of a thing that was found that I haven't actually looked at. And that was, I'd gotten some gravity component scrap, which meant I should have a small amount of silver, which I do. That's 7.49 kilos. Is that all I've got? Yeah, it is. There's no other silver in there, is there? No. Okay, so that's all the silver I've got. Now, that could be used to make medical components. Trouble is, it will make one. It'll make one single medical component. That's not particularly useful to me. What is potentially useful to me is a better welder, which also uses up a tiny fraction of the silver that I've got. So I'm making one. I'm going to get myself a better welder, because it is about time. I'm not going to bother with a better grinder or a better other thing. Looks like everything got moved. Yep. Like, I'm not going to bother making any of the other fancier stuff. I think welder is the main one that I really, really want. So there we go. Finally. Feels good. Yes. My shiny new purple welder is going to get much use today. So with me welding this by hand because of power constraints, why haven't I just built something big to deal with that issue? Part of the reason at the beginning was just because I'd not too long before built a massive, massive power production facility in my previous single player save. I kind of didn't want to do it again so soon after. And I also liked the idea of trying to use hydrogen as my power source. And that's kind of what all of this has been working toward. My ice base is where I'm going to get my power from. I want to bring hydrogen from there to here, burn the hydrogen, and get power. But to do that, I need to clear the way, and there are lots of enemies between me and that base, so I need guns. And I need guns around my base, especially here, to protect myself against any of the drones that come from those enemies when I finally go to fight them. And that's where the magnesium road came in, because I needed a route to the magnesium mine that wasn't going to need heaps of power. So it all kind of fitted together. It's just that the process of getting to all of these things was a lot more protracted than even I'd expected. I kind of wanted Survival Impossible to be a protracted process like this, because I wanted the ability to build lots of stuff to try and get an otherwise simple task done, and have sort of more than just an internal justification for doing those things. I'm not sure whether that was the right call or not, but it's what I wanted to do, and it's what I have fun doing. So that external justification for it was the fact that there's going to be hostiles in the way, and there's all these other bits and pieces that we need to make sure we're protected against as we build towards the bigger things. Sure, I could have just spammed out a massive wind farm by now. But that's not fun to me. Just building the same single block on giant trees over and over again. That's not my idea of a fun way to get power, so that's why I wanted to do it. That's why I wanted to do it a different way. Boy, did that different way take a long time. Like, a really long time. Though, to be fair, I did get distracted with things like the Arboretum, so... But that was always going to happen. Always. Right, so the rust texture's probably a little repetitive. Let's break it up a bit with some battered, I think. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed. The new corrugated texture on the interior blocks is just more deeply scratched. What if I use a mixture of that and battered? Oh, I quite like that. The colors match up really nicely, but it gives us a bit more variation to the texture. How does it compare if we have a no texture one? How does that fit in? It's not quite right. What if I reduce this by, say, 10% in the value? Make it a little more grey. Oh, I really like this. It looks like there are different ages of the panels. Oh, I'm totally going to use this effect in a few spots, I think. Just have a few of these slightly newer panels around the place. Kind of looking over at Steve's point of view and seeing how it looks there. And I think it works, because he's got a bit of a better overview. Oh, this is... Yeah, I'm totally gonna be using this more. Look at that. It just gives us that little bit of slight variation, that subtle difference. And also, without this being as repetitive as the rust texture, I think the interior wall blocks look better anyway.
Energy critical.
Well, I am pleased with how that worked. The good news is, the longer I spend welding this by hand, the more power I'm generating through the wind, through the solar, through everything else. That should start to build my battery storage back up. I don't think I use more power than I generate per day. I certainly hope I don't. So I should, in theory, the longer I spend doing this, gain power that's going to be able to make using the cheese ball a lot more practical. Because at the moment, I'd probably get one flight out of it, and then I would have to wait. So I may as well at least get something useful done in the meantime. Alright, let's try this with the warning hazard armor pattern thing. I do want it fairly dull. I don't want it particularly bright. Do I want it more orange than that? No, I prefer the yellow. It's definitely a texture to use sparingly. Now, what to put down in the hole? Maybe I could use this corrugated and use a dark grey. This will work. Fortunately, it went the long way. If the lines had gone the other direction, I'm not sure I would have been so pleased by this. Yeah, I like this. I'm liking how this room's coming together. I'm obviously going to be gradually getting rid of the rust paint around the place. It's just my default base coat, and then I work up from it and add extra bits of detail. Like, you can see on these buildings, I've got frozen parts, I've got rusty parts, I've got different things. but the rust is the
Energy
general theme
low.
around here because everything's just a bit rough. What I'd like to do is replace this conveyor line between this piston and the rest of the system. I think I'm going to make use of the new reinforced conveyor blocks, because having something like this in my wall adds a nice bit of depth and a bit of detail without actually having to add an extra row of blocks out or behind, which is really quite nice and something we haven't properly had access to prior to getting these blocks. If I had to if I decided to ever redo this welder array, I'd probably use them in there, facing outward like this, with the T pieces being used and stuff like that. I think that would make this look a bit more interesting. I'm going to build stairs to go over the top of this little line here, and I am connecting this piston up to the conveyor system because if I can do this conveyoring first, I can then use this conveyor as a cargo access point when I replace it with a cargo container, which would be very handy. It'll also potentially be useful for when we're actually printing off the fort's capac, because I can use it as a cargo access to put ammunition into the fort capac, because I've left that as a manual process. So what I'm thinking is, if I put a spacer in between where that piston is, using interior walls running across like this, I kind of want to use this pattern on it. I can then run the conveyor blocks in here, with them pointing out like this. And then a T-piece, like so. Then another vertical, like so. And I'll also run it around the other side. Now I'm sort of going to end up with doubled up conveyors here, but it's because I want this specific aesthetic. So these conveyors all have their open side facing out. For me to connect this up to the piston above, I'd need to have something like this conveyor junction that's here. This one here. But mounted further up. And I don't really want to do that. So what I'm going to do is double the line in a very unnecessary fashion so that I can get the look I want. I don't know if I'm going to be able to even reach half of this without going and getting a cheese ball. So it's easy to see how this sort of conveyor system is going to break up the wall. Now we've got the 2 blocks below and then the 6 blocks above. So, you know, we're part of the way there. Need to figure out a way to break up the top section, but hopefully I'll come up with something that looks alright. I'm also thinking that I'll try and get a bunch of catwalks up on the walls around here. Obviously not on this end wall because it's got the big support beams running vertically along it. Having those stick out will make any catwalk quite difficult to set up because it'll be sort of having to weirdly hang out too far. Considering how little I'd used the build from cockpit mode before I made this platform, I've now used it quite a bit. To the extent that I'd find it tough to argue against the rationale for building a ship designed entirely for just placing blocks. Not welding it, but just placing them. Because then that ship would be designed to not carry much cargo, just enough for simple placement, and wouldn't need a welder. So it'd be quite light, which would make it so I could possibly even fly upside down and things like that. Be a bit more nimble, and potentially burn a lot less power because I'm flying something much lighter. Don't have any plans to do that, but it is something I've contemplated. With those in place, you can really see why I need to have the cheese ball, because the scale of this building is huge, and to have attempted to weld this by hand would have taken me such a ridiculously long time. Also, I might continue some of... Oh, actually, let's use the heat vents. Yeah, these are great for industrial decorations. These things have so many interesting sides that aren't the side that they're actually designed for. So the back has this kind of catwalky look without being a catwalk. Then these sides all have their like pipes and electrics on them. And then of course you've got the vent side. I don't want to use the vent side of things. I want to use this more for maybe a mixture of these two faces coming out. Yeah, I think that adds some nice little nice little bit of detail like the conveyor line below it. And then I can probably do almost a mirror image of what I've done above. Just a bit taller. Something I didn't think about, which I probably should have, is that it's possible some of these blocks aren't actually airtight and might need to be. I'm planning on having some sort of areas back here where I'm currently flying that I can actually walk through, which means making them airtight, pressurized, breathable, because I want to put a viewing window that looks out over the valley and toward the gas giant, because I think that'll look really nice. I think this is work. Do I think this is work? I think this is working. If you imagine some catwalks probably in red going around these other walls, I think it kind of breaks up the uniform white enough with the extra depth of all the different blocks. I'm building a complete row of hinges here for my non-airtight massive hangar doors, and I'm making sure that all of the hinges are orientated the same way with that negative marker to my left. I decided to do it that way because I figure that when the doors go down, they should be going negative, and when they go up, they should be going positive. As that'll make it a bit easier for me to think my way through it when I'm setting it all up. And now we've removed every hinge part just to add them back. I'll probably end up actuating this with all of the hinges. They're obviously not needed. The amount of torque required to lift this door will be probably able to be delivered by a single hinge. But what I want is that kind of look of the whole door being attached. And I think this way achieves that much better. Like, if I have a single hinge or just a few hinges, it just doesn't quite have the same impact. I think if I'm clever about it, I should be able to build these doors without using the cheese ball. So my thought was... Oh wait, go back to my control panel, which I built over here so I could access the grid properly. Hinge. We've got our hinge door north, which is not yet set up. So the lower limit will put it about 70, upper limit, say 15. And velocity, let's go... Wait, what? No? Lower limit, minus 70. That should have laid it flat in a similar position to where I got this one. Yeah. So now, we can reach from here. There we go. Minus 71.45, and they're perfectly meeting in the middle. So the 2x1 slope doesn't quite align here, obviously. I'd need these doors to be much longer and sit quite high. But also, I'd have to figure out exactly which block length works with that, because not all block lengths will have an option where you can get them to meet. So these doors might have had to be further apart before I could get an angle that would work. Okay, that is, I think, all of this placed. So I'm going to try and weld it up, then have a look at how it looks before I build the second one. Just in case I don't like something, it means I've not spent all that effort doing the second one as well as the first. Unfortunately, I can't do this with the cheese ball because it's still not recharged when I checked it a few minutes ago. I've been running the hydrogen engines again to try and get a bit more power, but yeah, it's taken a while. Oh, I just had a thought about the solar panels before I place them. Might only actually be able to place 2 on here. So I'm planning on having armor blocks right up against this so that there's 0 gap. I'm not sure that solar panels have the shrunken collision mesh. So I may just be putting a solar panel here and here. In fact, I think I will, just to be safe. I'll try one once I've got it all set up, because I think it'd be nice, but I also would like to make sure that it works without it before putting it on there and then not knowing. Still, it's something. I really need to get the rest of the roof done though, because this roof's going to extend out about 3 or 4 blocks this way, which should give me enough space up there to put 4 wind turbines on each side. And 8 wind turbines is going to do a decent amount, especially up at that elevation. And I'll possibly put them on instead of the single block high, 2 blocks high, just to get a little bit of extra power. It's still likely to be about 100 kilowatts, but that's 800 kilowatts more than I've got right now. There we go. That's one door complete. I might, on the inside, put a second pane of glass so that I've got sort of a flat roof on the inside, but I'm glad that I put these ones in the gap because it meant that I could put these lights up the top here, which if I turn off my headlights, you can see it'll at least show up some of the door. I might put them down the bottom here yet, I'm not sure. I'll see how light it is once I've put stuff on the rest of the roof. That's one door down, let's get the other one done. In fact, let's check and see where the cheese ball's at. 56%. How does it look from on top now that they're closed? Yeah, I'm really happy with this. I think the sun will look really cool as we have shafts of light coming through this roof and through the eastern end. Yeah. Some tiny amount of extra power from these solar panels that's probably almost irrelevant, but, you know, with how long some of these projects take me to build, there's quite a few hours of the base kind of sitting idle, and just pumping this small amount of power in can make a big difference. Like, each of these wind turbines is about 100 kilowatts, and I've got, what, 15 maybe across the whole network? Because all of the buildings around here are connected to the same power grid and same conveyor grid, which is also possibly why I ran out of power, because there's a lot of lights all around the place. I might just go check on my iron reserves, because I think I might be about ready to go out and collect some more of the pods. See if there are any more. Iron. Yep. Yep. I think I need to go and collect some of the pods. Alright. Guess I'll go do that now. Come here, Manny. Ooh, actually, before we do that, let's see if I can make myself a better grinder. I wasn't initially worried about that, but because the pods are hand ground, it might be useful. Although I need iron for that. Dang it. I'm gonna have to go grind one down first. I can probably clean up some of this mess for the Arboretum, because that's another thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go back to an old save and get a blueprint of that. And I'm gonna use the butterball in order to replace, well, in order to repair it. Because with the butterball and all of that projected, the dome, it should be really quick to print. And then I'll just work inside and repair all of that. I think I've almost cleared up every single ore drop pod. I haven't ground down the last batch, but I've picked them all up. And as I was searching around, I remembered something that I had forgotten, which is that I've got these large batteries over here. I'm not sure if Manny's strong enough to pick them up, but if it is, then I should be taking these back, because that's a lot of power for my base that would be really nice. Because I'm a little bit... Oh, no, 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 no! No. Because I would really like to add this to the base. It's going to make it so much worse to drive around with. So that pushes the weight so much further forward. At least I've ground down some stuff to put in the back here. So what I need to do is take these back and think about where I can attach them, because then I have, what, 9 almost fully charged batteries. That's going to provide plenty of power for the cheese ball to keep flying. That will be amazing! I realize it's only a very temporary power source, but if it gives me the chance to get some buildings finished, that would be really, really useful. I think I know exactly where to put these. Into the lower level of the new building. I can easily merge block them onto all sorts of spots. I was struggling to think of what to put in there, and, well, the battery bank makes a lot of sense. What I'm thinking is just onto this wall anywhere here. It really doesn't... I honestly don't think it really matters. I'm going to have so much excess space inside this building compared to what I need, just so the outside looks nice. Which I'm okay with, but, you know, is still a thing. So yeah, somewhere here is perfect. That's 27 megawatt hours thereabouts of power that I just remembered existed. Which is a lot, considering my base probably produces something in the order of... Oh, I could probably put a script on it, LCD, to see exactly how much, but I reckon I've got maybe 20 wind turbines, something around that mark, and then 12 to 15 solar panels, so realistically averages out 2.5 megawatts an hour. So for me to get the amount of power that's in these batteries produced by my base should take more than 10 hours. So there's 10 hours of my base's generation capacity in these batteries. That is actually both depressing and amazing at the same time. Feeling chuffed with how well Manny's handling these batteries, though. I was really worried I was going to roll and flip and destroy the whole thing. And the batteries. Guess that shows how heavy those ore drop pods are. Something I was thinking about earlier while I was grinding these down is... I can't remember whether the build planner shortcuts were part of the game when I designed this area. Because I think if I designed it now, I would probably just make the floor out of cargo containers. Or maybe a connector.
Inventory full.
Because with build planner, I can just drop off my stuff and then keep grinding. So if I had a cargo container in the wall or something, I wouldn't have to worry about stopping grinding each block so that I don't grind the scrap as well. Because that's what I'm having to do. I do still want the collector floor for the ore to, well, the ingots to drop into, because otherwise I'd have to be grabbing it, dropping it, grabbing it, dropping it.
Inventory full.
It's a bit of a hassle in itself.
Inventory full. Inventory.
Yeah, I wonder if I'd do it differently. I am enjoying having my new grinder though. So much. It is making this a lot quicker than it has been in the past. I remember it being such a pain. It's not that bad. This should be the last of the scrap, I think. How much iron has that left me with? 348,000 kilograms. Oh, I wasn't expecting that much. Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll last me a little while. Maybe. With 5,000 plates already in stock. Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Those ore drop pods are just one of my best ideas. Stupidest, but also weirdly good. Wonder if Manny's going to be effective enough at getting these into position. Have an idea for getting these level to the local terrain enough? Or level to the building enough? Basically, I think I'm going to attach them to this back wall section at as close to ground level as possible. Let's go grab some weld pads, and can't think of what else I need right now. Got a little platform here that I can lower them onto. This platform's perfectly level, and so therefore I should be able to pick them up from here, and assuming the terrain isn't too different, I should end up picking them up at pretty much the correct angle to be able to lock it in. Hopefully it'll get me within the fudge factor that's allowed. Oh, yep, there we go. Well, that bit worked. That's one down. I need two more in place. Yeah! Yeah. Alright. That is a good amount of extra power. Oh, so happy with that. It's going to be amazing. Now all my vehicles can be recharged. More importantly, I'm not going to have to be skimpy anymore on my use of the cheese ball. That's the real kicker here. Best part. I have to admit, kind of happy that I'm at a point where I've now got heaps of iron again, quite a bit of power again, and I spent all this iron on building this massive structure so far. This thing's taken a lot of resources. It is my biggest building by far. Like, I think more materials are going into this building than went into the bridge. And this building is going to just be a massive sink for my materials because of having to print off all of the fort's capac. But that's fine, because they will stop any future reavers, I hope. After the roof, I think the next thing to do is this wall on this side, as I'll probably make this building symmetrical left to right from this perspective, so it'll stick out as far to this side as it will to this side. But this side, I've got free reign to do whatever I like, so I thought it would make more sense to start on the one where I'm connected already to the rest of the base, because I'm kind of stuck with the wall being at this position, which will leave me with sort of 3 blocks, depending on the level, between the outer skin wall and the inner wall. And in that space, I reckon I'll end up using it for things like storage. I might put a few other little decorative bits in there here and there, but mostly for the moment it's probably just going to be empty space to make the building look better, which is very wasteful, but I think it's necessary to make a building of this scale feel right. I've said it before, it's that scale of the hollow space that if you end up with just a big shell around it, it feels like a big shell rather than feeling like a meaningful building. And I know there are plenty of buildings in the real world that are just a big shell, but I think in Space Engineers, when you're trying to create that sense of real, it doesn't sit quite right for me. I want to use one of these gate blocks because I think it's big enough to actually fit the Liftsy through it. And yes, that's perfect. Look at that. The snow slopes perfectly up to the door. So if I go gate block there, and the ground is perfectly above. I can't believe how well that lines up. Thought this would. Like, you look at the sloping of the ground here, and I figured there'd be a spot that's just about right. I mean, yeah, it's not 100% perfect because it does slope a bit. The snow comes a little bit inside, but it's as close as we're going to get here. Very happy. Yeah, the Liftsy can easily fit through that. And then I've just got to push this far back, potentially in through where the skin wall would be, to make sure there's enough room for the Liftsy to get in. And then I'll have to figure out a way to get a charging arm or something like that set up to be able to control and easily connect up to keep it charged. One thing I was thinking is, the more parking spots I have, the less vehicles of shame I have piling up behind the shack here. Because I think it was getting pretty dire out there, the number of things that I just kind of half used, half completed, and were just sitting out there. I want to say rusting, but, you know, I guess could have been rusting. There is that mod that does that. Give a decent sized little hangar for the Liftsy. And then I can always have stairs coming off here, and then stairs going up, and I should be able to squeeze them into the remaining space. Thought it could be nice on this to have a door here. Because then I've got a separate office to the garage area, because the garage area probably won't be pressurized, but I could do a similar 3-way airlock to what I've got on this other garage building, so that I've got an interior pressurized space that continues all the way through this building, right up to where you can overlook the production area of the fort's capac. And I thought it might be nice to start that here, having a separate man-sized entry. Oh, it's so good to have so much iron that I don't care about it again. Started to think I had to be careful. Okay, this is taking shape. Got space in here, we can walk through. Get rid of that. We can walk through into here, which is the airlock. It's got a little armory area. We've got our vent above us. I'll put a light in this spot. Walk through. This will be another little office area. I'll try and remember to put some crates in here with some food and water, just so there's another emergency spot for access, but that shouldn't be a big issue because I've got the conveyor network with food and water in my main storage. We can then walk out the back here, and I'll start having some stairs that go up to a higher level. Maybe even to the roof level of this outcropping building first. Get some stairs up to the roof of that, and then have another little airlock so you can walk out on the roof. And if it's big enough, the roof of this might be useful as a storage area for drones and the searchy and stuff like that. If I make sure that it's piped and has connectors. Yes, I should do that. I should definitely do that. Something else I've just noticed while I've been around here is that this landing is almost at the right height for that rooftop. And while I weld up the rest of this space, I'm going to think about whether it might be nice to not have another external stair on that building, but instead connect it up to here using a small grid bridge. So what I'm thinking is replace one of those slopes over there with a hinge, or attach a hinge onto that, replace the hinge head with a small grid head, and then we should be able to make something small grid that works there, I think. Kind of want to have a play around with it. Not sure how hard or easy that's going to be though. What I might do first is just weld up all these internal bits, build the rooftop, get a stairwell up to it so that I can access it from either side, and then we'll have a look. Ooh, another thing I should... Yes, actually that's a really good idea, because then I should connect these cargo systems up. Because if I do that, I can then use those connectors to get access to stuff. Let's get some sort of internal access designed in here. This is actually a relatively large space. I was just looking at it as I was moving around with the cheese ball, and I kind of wish I'd put the gate one block this way, because if I'd done that, this side of the gate would have been covered up by this, and I could have then put another bit to cover up this side in the middle. Because I've always found it looks a bit awkward with the gates, how their texture dimensions are smaller than the rest of the stuff around them. As in, the size of these rust bits on the armor are much bigger than the size of them when they were on the door. So it doesn't really line up. There we go, now I can charge up my power, I can get my oxygen, and I can do all this, and I can take my time. And I can fall into the connector. That's not good. This can be really tricky to get out of. Oh no. Yeah. That was really annoying. That was really, really annoying. Full block in here. I'll run around to the other side. Don't fall in the connectors. Then add a hinge there. Run back around. This is going to take a lot of switching back and forth between each side to build without a jetpack. Oh, can I not reach? Oh, alright. Let's try this. This is going to be a bit more risky. Walking on the railing. Is that going to allow me to reach? Just the top bit. Ugh, that's annoying. I might end up having to use the cheese ball just to get things at the right height. So what I'm thinking we're going to need is some way to neatly transition from this hinge part to something that's going to look like a support for this little bridge. It's a perfectly smooth transition at this end. Now, the height is different, but those of you that have been watching me build stuff like this for a long time would know that half blocks in small grid can be walked up smoothly like regular stairs. So all I've got to do is use half armor blocks and full armor blocks to get the height to perfectly match the railing on the other side, which is actually relatively easy. So full block here, and then we go half block, and we have a perfect stair. Hey, easy. Walking. Perfect. Now, here's the cool part. So this is my plan for the railing. We've got neon tubes, which are obviously really bright and don't look right in this sort of situation. But painting them black and shiny, which is a way to get rid of the emission, the emissivity of it, that doesn't work either. So what I've done is underneath here, we've got a piston and a landing gear. So when I move this back into position, I'll be able to extend that piston and lock to the other grid. I can then detach
Energy low.
my hinge, turning off the power to this grid, which will turn off the emissivity, and we'll have a nice, dull, but white railing. I could do it in red. I'm not sure which way it's going to look better. I think the white probably will, because I don't think the snow texture shows up on the... come on, brain, think of the word. Don't think the snow texture shows up on the neons. Let's test. Yeah, it just stays red, so we'll stick with white. So that's the first part. Let's bring this back in, because I had to push it out to get this corner piece in. You'll see why in a second. Bring this back to about 60 degrees. So that corner piece couldn't actually be placed because it was colliding with this main grid. But now that's nice and neat. I can push these blocks back. I took them out thinking I was needing to get access to put that piston underneath, but I did not. And now, the next little bit is to get a little railing for these stairs. And I thought for that, what I would do is have a separate height piece that goes from the step. I'll show the effect of this thing being turned off once I've actually got the whole bridge designed. Because if I lock it on now, I may need to move this again later, and that will be annoying. What do I do about the railing on the other side? That's tricky. Do I just shove another hinge on? Just a small hinge, so that I can have a railing that's at the right angle. Because the problem I've got here now, unless I continue this bridge all the way to that corner, which I guess I could do actually. I could make the bridge, instead of transitioning on a corner here, I could make this go all the way and run right down to this corner here, which might give us a nice transition onto the top here without having to fiddle too much. Let's see if that works. For making things like this, I am so glad that the collisions for being able to weld and grind stuff like this have been improved. Because trying to do this back when I was building over on the ice lake was all kinds of pain. I know this is exactly what the Splitsie was meant to prevent me doing, but I think I've reached a point where I've created a bit of a nightmare to even get a vehicle like that into. I was just thinking about this. I use these neons a decent amount. I can't remember a time on a survival build where I've actually used the neons to be neons. I'm always trying to make use of them as different things to what their original intent was. Which is kind of amusing. And I suspect there are quite a few people in my shoes on that one. The neon has a very specific aesthetic, so it's kind of nice that it can be misused. Like, I use the term misused generously here because I think it's kind of fun to intentionally switch up the apparent intended use of a block. It's that whole nice part usage thing in Lego. Okay. That's locked. I might just leave these bits here for a second, just in case. And hinge, can I get access to you? Yes. And staring at the neon tubes.
Energy
3,
low.
2, 1. Blammo. How much better does that look? Now that it's an unpowered grid, they're dull, which means they kind of work with the rest of this stuff. It doesn't look that weird next to this. Yeah, it's untextured, but at a distance, I think that looks awesome. I don't usually feel this chuffed at the end of a build, but I'm really proud of how this worked out. I think it looks great. I think it's I think it's potentially something I'll use again more than once. I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. If you couldn't tell. It's been a while since I've built something that I felt I kind of came up with a way of doing it that's a bit cool and a bit unique and a bit special, but still usable in other situations. Especially with how smoothly you can walk across this. It's great. Feels good. I'm going to complete this build next time, I think. The building all of that interior space, building the hinges, going out and collecting more resources, doing all that stuff, ended up taking a bit longer than I expected. But I'm so happy that I spent the time on this because I think... Uh-oh. I'm stuck in it. No, don't get stuck in the connector! No. Uh-oh. Oh, I hate this so much. I hate this so much. Ah, yes! Oh, that worked. Phew. I thought I was going to die at my outro. Because if I was trapped in the connector, I wasn't going to be able to get out. Ugh. I was just going to have to suffocate there and then make the long hike. But, as I was saying, next time I'm going to finish this building. I've got a couple of cool little things I want to do for it, like the garage for the absconder and the other couple of vehicles that aren't in regular use. Although maybe the absconder will get its own special spot eventually. I've got to finish off the charging bit for the Splitsie over here, and then I'm going to have a big viewing window that comes out this side of the building so I can look over the valley and look out towards the gas giant and have a nice little spot to sit that I'm hoping to put near a viewing area that looks into the Fort Capac printer. I'm also going to fully automate the Fort Capac printer in terms of I push a button and it will go from completely not print, like complete scratch start, to printed and doors open and lifted out the top, ready to be picked up. Though, now that I say that, it probably needs to have... it depends how high it pushes it up. If it pushes it up to a level where I can also put a bridge in to be able to put the ammunition in, then we can have that set up perfectly. So that's the plan for this building. Depending on how long all that stuff takes to do, I might also try and do the promised work on Steve's hole in the wall, which I didn't do this time. So there's all that and plenty more to come, and I will see you then. Smooth. Oh, so happy with this. So happy.